I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli is on vacation, and Andrew Kuo does not take days off. Andrew Kuo, how are you, buddy?
Oh, what is this wrestling? I'm opening up a package. It's a Derek White jersey. Is it a White Boy Summer? I got wow, Roger White jerseys in here. Was it Roger White? Forget. Who are the most famous whites in the NBA?
James Flight White comes to mind.
Jahadi White.
Jahadi White. James Flight White was the guy who did a dunk from the free throw line with a windmill, I believe, to beat David Lee in a NCAA or high school slam dunk contest. Maybe it was college.
And it was probably really frustrating for David Lee to see somebody beat him in a slam dunk competition and be like, I'm not a part of White Boy Summer.
No, it was like, who is appropriating white culture here?
Exactly. Did he take off from the foul line, or was he like half a foot in? They're all half a foot.
I don't know, but James White was one of the best dunkers ever.
Insane.
He was outrageous.
Yeah. Outrageous. And as a Knick, he was fun, but never really panned out.
Does Hassan Whiteside count for White Boy Summer?
Absolutely. He might be the evolution of White Boy Summer. More white side.
Shout out to Kobe White as well.
Kobe White, who's kind of a disappointing player, but it might be his summer, so let's pay attention.
Are we already sick of the quote, White Boy Summer? I felt like the expiration of that was real fast. It was like within 2 hours of Chet Hanks coining a phrase that was just an offshoot permutation of Hot Girl Summer. So it wasn't really inventive at all, but him coining that, to it going viral, to him going on a Instagram story diatribe about vineyard vines and flannels. I think it ended. It felt like it came full circle and was over even before we blinked an eye.
Yo, it's hard to stay interesting. And Chet Hanks was interesting for many reasons. And it's been a while for him. It's been a few years since we found out that he was the son of a famous actor.
That's when you say interesting, you mean that he's Tom Hanks' son.
Tom Hanks' son. He spoke in a patois kind of accent and affectation. He looked the way he did. It was jarring to find all this information out. It was kind of sort of like a milkshake duck, but we weren't mad. We were fascinated. It just kept on evolving so quickly. And now in 2021, when he drops the White Boy Summer thing, it's got to come harder than that at this point, right?
I did appreciate that he said, like me, John B., and then your guy who did the Tyler Hero song.
Mm-hmm. It was on SNL.
Jack Harlow.
Yeah.
I just like that John B. was number 2 on that list. Such as John B., the R&B singer from 1997.
Man, it's hard to have a feeling about this idea that Chet Hanks, your guy Chet Hanks is pushing. It's like, sure, I want you to have a good summer, Chet Hanks. I want Derek White to mash, the Spurs are a cool team. I am not against people claiming that they're going to have an awesome summer. So, do you, Chet?
Were you a John B. fan?
No. Should I have been, though?
John B. has a couple jams. One is called They Don't Know, which is great. And another one is...
Featuring any luminaries of the time?
He has a song with Tupac.
That's a luminary?
I think that's Are You Still Down? But They Don't Know was always the one that I liked a lot. Very slow. It's a slow jam, but excellent record for those trying to figure out who John B. from the Chet Hanks White Boy Summer oratory who is involved. Also, though, he put out some merch, and he used a sort of a gothic font, which really feels very Aryan Nation prison gang.
Yeah, that was tough. Like, it looks like a New York Times typeface. It's a gothic, old school thing with the letter form of W. The interns can talk more about this. When you see the word white in that typeface, it kind of like is a signifier for something you've seen before. That said, I'd like to reclaim that typeface and reclaim that word.
Ooh.
Let's just like forget about it. Let's start new. Like, I don't believe Chet Hanks is doing this to like kind of what's the right word? Dog whistle a certain community.
No, definitely not.
I think he thinks it looks sick. And I think that's okay.
Yeah, the only people he mentioned were doing it right were rappers. It didn't seem like he was... It seemed like this is a poor version of reclaiming whiteness within like the rap world.
Yeah, it's hard to find out who is signaling what and what is being reclaimed. But like, the one thing with Chet Hanks is he's pretty harmless, in my opinion. Like, he's a goofball. When I think of him, I think of goofball. And
Can he reclaim the swastika for the cool white boys?
I mean, like, can Buddhists reclaim the swastika? Like, it's been difficult, right? But it's... If you look down at some tile work or some rugs, you can find a bunch of swasties. But
is that what they're calling it?
I don't know. I want to reclaim that form, maybe. I don't know. Like, I understand when people get outraged about that letter form in the word white, but let's switch it up, man.
People who are like really into like, we need to reclaim the swastika. Like, this is your life's passion? It's like yeah, you see my car out front. I've just covered it with like anti-circumcision bumper stickers. Like, so that's your agenda. That's it. You wake up in the morning and you're like, we got to get rid of circumcision. Like, that's my thing. That and swastikas, reclaiming them.
You've been watching that HBO show about Q?
I have heard it was good.
It's awesome. It's like, if you like Tiger King, this is the shit. It's really excellent. I'm mad that I can't binge it all at once like I did Tiger King. I gotta wait for next week's episode. It's sick, man. It's full of characters, and it doesn't have a sarcastic tone to it, which I very much appreciate. It kind of goes through facts. Obviously, these people are so wacky that it's hard not to look at it as satire or even a performance, but it is fascinating, man.
What's the angle they take on it? Because I understand what you mean, but they have like an appropriate gravity that it's not, look at these loons, haha, how goofy they are. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious, do they make the argument that this movement is like insane, or are they tying it into sort of larger movements of anti-Semitism or racism, or like the religious right that it sort of seems to merge with at various like nexus points?
I will claim 3 episodes in, maybe 3 hours in, neither of those things. Mm-hmm. He talks about privacy. He's a privacy guy, so he does TED Talks about like what your information does and how it's helpful and harmful and what it can do moving forward. And he was really interested in 4chan and 8chan. But the documentary mostly is, who are these people and who the hell is Q? Which I very much enjoy. Because
it's kind of a mystery.
Oh, absolutely. So he's trying to find who Q is, and he has some suspects, and they're just very fascinating people.
Oh, that sounds good. You are not the first person to recommend this, and other people's opinions, are just as good. I feel like these are strong recs.
There's nothing dark to it, and if you go into something like that, I think rightfully being like, this is a dangerous thing that has to be taken seriously, or if you think it's a funny thing that has to be funnier, all that works. It's one guy's point of view, and his point of view kind of is good. He he goes around the world and tries to find this guy, and he may have. The evidence is very compelling 3 episodes in, but it's more, I think I enjoy it even more than the Firefest stuff, but I like the story of this. I like this story.
I want to say that it's Showtime, but I could be wrong. But I believe it's Showtime that is creating like a docu-series, or maybe it's actually acting. Maybe it's like a traditional Showtime like series about the Capitol riots, insurrection, whatever you want to call it. I'm like,
I'll watch that.
I get it, but like already? It was like 2 months ago. Like, does that need to be like fictionalized or
Dramatized? Yeah, sure.
dramatized? I don't know. I'm not like precious about it. I was just like, oh, we're doing this right now. Like that was in January.
I can reconcile with that only if when I put it into the box of art. Art doesn't need gestational time. You could just like comment on something immediately. And when 9/11 happened, there was movies right away, and people bristled. And I think, like rightfully, but I think time went by and we watched those movies, and they're good or bad for different reasons, right? I think Zero Dark 30 could have been too soon, and some people talked about that, but I don't think it's ever too soon. I think you can jump right into it. These productions take time though, so it's not going to just drop like a comedian might grasp current events or a tweet,
I mean, when was remember Jonathan Safran Foer, right? Didn't he put out a book that was like incredibly loud, or extremely loud and incredibly close? Like that was about 9/11. It came out a couple of years afterwards. So I think you're right about there isn't necessarily a prescribed time that people need to wait to put out art. And maybe in the case of this series, by the time it actually goes into casting and production, post-production, it'll be a year and change. It'll be like totally appropriate. It's really just when they sign the deal.
And you make a good point, because like we're invested in the world of sports, and it's hard to describe a player who's in his second year, right? And sometimes these stories take a long time to develop. Like I just watched that, I believe it was Netflix. Chris Smith did or produced the Varsity Blues documentary with Matthew Modine, kind of dramatizing half of it and the other half being interviews about that whole thing. And that was very recent. Like the trials are still pending, right? A lot of people who pleaded not guilty, we still don't know what's going to happen. So he could have waited, but he didn't, and it was really good as well.
Maybe I'm just leery of Showtime after their treatment of the upstate folk in Escape of Dannemora.
Listen, your culture is a costume, so I don't know what to say.
Clearly, they're going to be trotting out the fake mustaches for the Capitol insurrection series.
I think the one takeaway from that show, that award-winning show, that I thought was interesting, and probably the most poignant part of it, was they didn't really drag you for garbage plates. I was waiting for the garbage plate to show up. No garbage plates.
They don't have garbage plates up there.
Okay, why not? No.
That's just a Rochester thing.
It's only the city of Rochester.
That's it.
Nowhere
else.
For the zillionth time, can you tell our listeners, our Patreon subscribers, what a garbage plate is?
I'm honestly just telling the Patreon subscribers.
for a few days.
So the Rochester local delicacy, which you've heard of, the garbage plate. Depending on where you get it, it could also be called a trash plate, a refuse plate, a junk plate.
What do you call it?
I'll call it a garbage plate or a trash plate. Those are the two. Because one is the actual name that it was originated at, and the other one was the name that it was called at the place that I used to go to.
Which is called?
I think that was Mark's Texas Hots, which I would go to.
Oh my God, that sounds like a place I would love.
So, yeah, in Rochester, there's these places, they call them Hots, and they're just diners. But they all sell their version of the garbage plate for the most part. So what it is, for the uninitiated to this culinary joy, is hash browns on
Yum.
one side of your plate, or
Fucking
most likely in a
delicious.
styrofoam container.
Right. Go. Yeah.
On the other side of that, you would have a lot of times you would have macaroni salad.
Ooh, tight.
You could
Delicious.
do it with beans, but to me, macaroni salad is really the way to go. Which of course is kind of cold. So
Yes.
you have your home fries, which are warm, and then you've got your macaroni salad, which is cold. Then you put either hot
Two
dogs
carbs.
or
Two
hamburgers
carbs.
on
Wow.
top, and then you dump a bunch of really like noxious onion gravy on top of that.
Sounds tight, man.
There was a place called, I think, Daddy-O's, which I never went to, but
I've
they
heard
were a
of this place.
Rochester-themed bar in the West Village.
Yeah.
And I think they sold garbage plates there. So
You
anyway,
never went?
I went there, but I don't. When I went there, I didn't know that it was a Rochester bar. I think I just drank a Genesee beer or something and watched a baseball game or something. But
As
anyway,
they do.
that is really the only Rochester product that is there and nowhere else. And there are a couple other upstate oddities. There's one thing called, what are they called? Speedies. And they are kind of like a marinated chicken kebab, and you put them in foil. And this is a Binghamton thing. It's like and then of course Buffalo has buffalo wings, which people have heard of. Those are kind of your main upstate, like regional delicacies.
Yeah, it all checks out. It sounds great, man. And but pound per
Thank you.
pound per pound, what's up with Rochester? A lot of drama comes out of there.
We're really in the news cycle.
At least 3 times a year, I'm like, here's Rochester again.
Well, there's really
Here
violent,
comes Chunky.
there's really violent, brutal cops that they always manage to get into the news for mistreating people.
Is
So
it
that's
because
like built in.
is it a wealth disparity? Is that why there's always news out of there?
Well, unfortunately, Rochester, like Buffalo, is one of the poorest cities in the nation.
For sure.
So you have a police force that is largely does not live in the city of Rochester, has been very abusive and violent for a long time. So you had you've had 3 incidents within the last year with the Rochester cops putting a hood on the guy and he died. And then they also had 2 episodes where they pepper sprayed like children. So yeah, that's why Rochester's been in the news a lot.
Also, Polaroid and the idea of technology, and I believe the Trump administration trying to save Polaroid.
Oh, that was Kodak, yeah. So
Kodak, my bad.
The whole city was built around Kodak for many, many years.
Yeah.
You guys enjoying this Rochester content? Because I am.
Yep.
The whole city was built around Kodak, Xerox, Bosch and Lomb, a bunch of companies that are not really in existence in the same way anymore. But yeah, Kodak at this point is a very appropriate emblem for the kind of fall of American industry. That it was an entire city built around it. Then it sort of became an odd, like, brand that they would just throw on phones or jackets.
Yeah.
And then its final incarnation was as like a Trump administration Ponzi scheme or something. Like a stock scam.
So basically, what I'm coming is a roundabout way to talk about what bullshit Dannemora was. Escape from Dannemora. Escape at Dannemora was kind of like, yeah, they put on that Rochester costume, that culture costume, and flaunted around my TV.
However, for our basketball fans, Isaiah Stewart, Rochesterian, nicknamed Beef Stew.
Maybe, with all due respects to B-Ball Paul, my favorite nickname in the NBA. Here comes Beef Stew.
Beef Stew is so good. It's not far from a trash plate, so there's a little extra there, a little extra seasoning, if you will.
My favorite and one of my most memorable and formative basketball moments, I believe, is when the Bucks played maybe the Heat, and Darvin Ham somehow got switched onto Glenn Rice. And I think Marv Albert was like, Ham's all over Rice. So here, shout out to Beef Stew. Hopefully, he looks good, man, and he looks the part.
I can't believe I just got like 4 minutes of Rochester content.
Yo, we always go into Rochester. This is the Rochester pod.
You baited me.
I not only bait you, I encourage you.
Yeah, you specifically asked. I guess it's not.
I love
baiting
Rochester.
per se.
Come on. I've only driven through, but where I went to school, there was echoes of the garbage plate, but it was like meat sauce. So there was gravy that was basically liquefied meat that they put on hot dogs, and they called it New York style from a place called New York Central in Providence. It was so intense, but also like super charming. And I don't know, like I think it's a cliche to really find comfort in comfort food, but that stuff rules, man.
You know, we were talking about comfort food last episode.
Yeah.
The boil or discomfort food.
The boil.
However
The
you
boil.
view it. The boil.
I love that stuff.
Which of course you love it because you're basically BMM from Providence. You're up there eating shellfish left and right.
They wanted me to wear Boston Red Sox hat, but I refused. Like Ben Affleck, it's not part of my brand. The brand is still strong in me. I had my Timberlands on. I had my Yankees cap.
With a
You
new
can't-
blue Yankee on. Who but Quo?
You can't wash these Timberland colors away. These colors don't run.
So we had that conversation, right? About the boil. Really great stuff. If you haven't caught up on that pod, fantastic.
They would say a perfect pod tidbit.
I was thinking, man, you know, we all carry masks around now, right? Masks, blah, blah, blah. Masks, COVID. Like, you leave the house, mask.
I double mine.
Sure, you got 2 masks on you on the train, doubled up.
Ted Cruz
Supermarket.
would call me a theater kid.
But everyone, right? We've gotten accustomed to masks. All in different colors, styles. Some are paper, some are washable. Masks everywhere.
I got my goth one that's orange and blue. It has a Knicks logo on.
But what's up with bibs? We can't put a bib in our pocket? We can... All right, the odds of you getting COVID when you leave the house, I don't know, let's say 1 in 1,000. The odds of you eating a nice big bowl of bucatini and splashing a little sauce on your brand new cookies merch, not 1 in 1,000. Where's the bibs?
All right,
When will we normalize bibs?
Are you saying we should all carry kerchiefs around?
I'm saying bibs, literal bibs.
Do we need our own bib, or could we just tuck a napkin into our collar that they provide at the restaurant?
Can you just put a napkin over your face and not get COVID? No. Get yourself a proper bib.
So the bib has to be sanctioned by the person. The person needs to have the bib before they eat.
What do they say about bibs? They're like art. You know them when you see them, Quo. A napkin is not a bib. You know this.
Okay, so okay. Is there more to this take? I got questions.
I'm just saying the bib seems like a very functional part of a dining ensemble that now that we've normalized carrying an extra accessory around, why not make it a bib? As we slowly reemerge and get back to our lives, maybe we take the mask, but now we turn it into bibs. They're very similar.
This could be read as an anti-mask segment. Are you poking fun at people's COVID drip?
No, I'm saying it's inspirational.
Okay.
But
so,
as everyone gets vaxxed, we're going back indoors, we can just toss away the masks and pretend that never happened. Or we can say, look at the freedom, the beauty that was allowed in the mask. What about bibs?
So I think the boil does definitely give you bibs in all these crab places. I believe the one on Grand Street that they named after you. I'm trying to think of the name. I believe it's called Crab du Jour. Right. I was like, is Ben in there? They're like, not today. But we did name the restaurant after him. But I'm into bibs because sometimes my crispy cookies merch needs to stay crispy. And
It could be a sink replacement.
So there's. Do you think I have a question for you? Mm-hmm. Is a waiter putting a bib on you as you're sitting sus? Because a lot of men feel emasculated when this happens. I quite enjoy it, but it hasn't happened to me since I was a kid.
I don't know the last time that's happened, which is partly my bib position here that I don't feel like I'm getting bibbed up by staff appropriately, and I think you should bring your own. Now, is it emasculating? Like, I don't know. When I'm being tucked into my large adult crib and someone puts a bib on me, I feel very manly.
Because there's all that debate about Salt Bay. Salt Bay has transformed, right? This is what Chet Hanks needs to do. He needs to take on a different kind of vibe, a new debate. But there was one video where someone refused to eat meat from the Salt Bay's knife because it looked kind of sensual, right? And meat's delicious, and of course it's like, that's so tasty. And he was like, no, I'm not going to go out like that. And a lot of the pushback was like, oh, you're not comfortable enough in your own skin to do this? And he's like, no, I don't want to be dunked on. I think he said dunked on. And
I can see both sides in this here. Because one, if you're going to his restaurant, this is the shtick.
This is the big shtick.
He's going to slide his meat down your throat, and you're going to look at him in the eyes. Like, this is how it works.
Yeah.
So when you say, no, you can sprinkle it down your forearm and put it all over my food, and I'll eat that. But no way am I eating that meat off the skewer.
Right. And a lot of people were like, this is sus. And a lot of women are just like, you are the worst. And yeah, I could see both sides too. I don't know what I would do in that situation. I'd probably go with the flow, the vibe in the room. The real question is, are you the bib bay?
I just think we can have like formal bibs. Oh, what's the dress code? Oh, it's dressy. Okay, cool. I'll bring my like doily lacy bib for that event. Oh, it's more like a picnic vibe. Okay, cool. This is just like casual. Maybe some lobsters on it. Maybe a little checkerboard bib. You could match it with your clothing. I'm just saying the bib could be a valuable accessory.
Oh, this is the most important moment in my life, like a graduation or a wedding or an anniversary. Here's my Cookies Hoops bib.
So what we're getting at...
It says basketball. Patreon subscribers, keep an eye out.
No, the Knicks are playing? Let me grab my basketball bib. My goth basketball bib.
Yeah, it says Limp Bizkit on it. A bib skit.
Yeah, it has a pentagram on the front.
Dude,
with a ball going through it.
When I'm eating my delicious cheesy fries or cheesy nachos at the Garden, which I hope to go to at some point in the next year or two, I tuck my napkin into my collar.
Also, what do you mean next year or two? Like 2 years from now?
The season might end really soon, so maybe next year I'll go, right? Like, I don't know if they're going to play enough games this season for me to get my vaccine and be able to make it.
I see what you're saying.
They're going to... It's white boy summer, not Knicks boy summer, Ben.
Well, hopefully by then you'll have your bibs ready.
I'm saying I already have my bibs ready, but they're not my signature bibs. They're provided by the place because I don't want to get the delicious nacho cheese all over my drip.
I mean, you could almost turn a lot of masks into bibs. Like, they could be multifunction. It's possible. Like, it would take some design tweaks, but someone could do it. Some genius.
Yeah, I did notice that the mask customization, there's been no Shark Tank mask movement, right? There's no like mask that made a better mask.
Well, the masks that had the little like wheel on the side, those just became uncouth because you're going to blow your own air out.
Yeah, you can't do that.
So those were out. Yeah, there was no real adaptation. The gold standard was like the N95, and that just kind of stayed the same way. The ones that look like a bird's beak are kind of good, but after a while, those get lame when you're wearing like.
And we know they get dirty.
Medical style ones. They're expensive, and as you said, they get dirty, and you can only use them a couple times.
There's no like Telfar moment, like there's no mask to get, because it just kind of feels weird, and no one's been able to do it the right way. I just like those blue hospital masks. Those look great. I've been doubling mine though.
Yeah, I'm out on the blue ones. Black or pink.
See, that's one move too many for me, for my fragile soul. But I feel it. I one day hope to get there.
The black ones look pretty tough in comparison. But I mean, why are we even talking about masks? COVID ended like 3 weeks ago.
It's true.
We're now in the era of bibs.
White bib summer.
Mike Bibby.
That's right. Biz back, be bombo.
So speaking of satanic iconography,
Speaking of Satan,
I saw that you were really upset by Lil Nas X's new shoes. You were furious and offended.
well, I saw them and I was like, that's it. I'm no longer listening to Old Town Road, and I'm no longer supporting satanic shoe companies. And I let Twitter know about it.
I went the other direction. I actually became a Satan worshiper because of those shoes, and honestly, it's been great.
See, we were all fearing this, and sometimes the worst fears come true. It converted you from Jesus Christ to Satan himself.
Did people actually care about the Satan thing, or was it the drop of blood, or was it that he's a gay guy? Like, what was the vector of was it all three? They just were like, oh my God, Satan and blood, and he's giving a lap dance to the Lord of Flies?
And this is
What a
this is
scene.
a guaranteed likes moment where you can definitely, based off of your own Twitter scene, you can either get 20 or 2,000 likes based off of this signal, right? It felt so old fashioned to me. You remember when Sinead O'Connor tore up a picture of the Pope?
Yeah.
And remember Dana Carvey's character on SNL?
The church lady.
The church lady. It's like, Satan? It felt so 90s, talking about bibs. Back when I was wearing bibs. I was a teenager.
This is the Joe Biden era. We're like arguing about Satan. We're wearing bibs.
Obi Toppin was dunking at the Garden for the Knicks. It was like 30 years ago. So I think it was really nice to hear this debate go on. I'm like, are we still mad at Satan? Or we still think Satan is a thing? Because the shoe, to your point, was so cute, right? And I take Lil Nas X pretty seriously because he's an awesome tweeter, and his ideas, whether they be funny or too zoomer for you, I think he's like super smart. And his second act as like a thoughtful commentarian is kind of amazing, right?
Slash troll, and which overlaps because he's doing the same thing, just sort of with a different angle on it. But him being a thoughtful commentarian and him being a troll are actually the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. And when he put out that shoe, I was like, I caught the reaction before I caught the shoe. But when I dug deeper into what that shoe was, I'm like, this is really cool.
I did not dig that deep on it because I was so into Satan immediately.
You were just like already turning on. You lit the candle, you turned on a Knicks game, and you were fully into the House of Satan.
Yeah, I was just enmeshed in like the cult of Beelzebub. Is that how you say it? Mm-hmm. So, what was the deal with the blood? Whose blood was it? Was it Lil Nas X's?
I believe so. Okay, so from the rough background, from what I know, there's a 666 on the shoe itself. It has colors. I believe it was an Air Max 95.
It was definitely an Air Max, yeah.
I might have the year wrong, but it was an awesome looking shoe. I believe there was 666 of them. It was not sanctioned by Nike. It was a different company who customized existing Nikes. You can stitch onto whatever at this point in 2021. And I believe there was a drop of blood present in like the thread or the inks that they use. And I think it was his. I need to make sure, but of course it made the jokes like, well, there's a drop of blood in everything in capitalism, and it opened up all this stuff. And I just thought it was kind of an adorable shoe. I don't know.
So basically it was a Brooklyn-based marketing company. It's called like Mischief, but without vowels, as modern companies love to do.
Or like trip hop companies, yeah. Then the 90s are back.
And they wanted Nike now wants all 666 copies of it destroyed.
Ooh, gotta get ours, man. The price just doubled.
Nike's statement in Brooklyn federal court was that Nike has suffered significant harm to its goodwill, including among consumers who believe that Nike is endorsing Satanism.
I don't find fault in Nike for doing this. They're a huge company, and you have to say something. Yeah, people were mad at Nike. People were like, we're going to boycott Nike for Lil Nas X using their shoe for this platform. Like, Nike just has to do this paperwork and, like, hopefully it'll just go away for them, right?
Nike apparently did not react so strongly when the same company put out Jesus shoes with holy water in 2019.
Those were cool, too. I remember those. Those look nice. Of course, you're going to lose some customers because of Satan.
I just didn't know whose blood it was. Was it really Nas X? Lil Nas X?
I mean, I don't know, but it wouldn't be that hard. You know, like, you just have to poke your finger and drop 2 drops of blood into like a gallon of water, and you're like, yeah, blood is in every shoe.
Well, they said 1 drop in each shoe, I believe. So
666 drops is a lot of blood.
Is it? I don't know.
That has to be a quart, right? Maybe not.
I don't know. I'm thinking if you had, if you gave blood and they did a decent amount, that's got to be like 666 drops.
I know, that's a lot of blood. I don't know. I think that's
or maybe they just had, okay, here's the people at the marketing company. Everyone just get like the amount that you would do if you were giving blood once, and we'll just have a ton of blood and we can do little drops.
Yeah.
It would have been much more effective if they did it with urine. Like every shoe includes like 1 drop of pee.
Well, shout out to Piss Christ, the artwork that got rid of the National Endowment for the Arts, pretty much, which was a bummer. Andres Serrano, not like the ham, not like Dumb and Ham.
Wasn't that at the Brooklyn Museum? Yeah,
it's a great artwork. It exists as an edition. It's a figurine of Jesus Christ on the cross. It's an artwork that exists. I'm just describing the artwork, and it's submerged in a yellow bath. I believe it's real piss, and he took a photo, and it caused such an uproar that they had to restructure how they funded the National Endowments of Arts, and it never came back, which is kind of a shame, but you got to stand by that artwork. It's funny how some people may claim that free speech is their thing, but get mad at a shoe that says 666 on it.
Would you wear Piss Christ Air Max 95s?
What would that entail? A drop of pee and yellow?
One drop. No, maybe it's just full of pee. The entire bubble is just pee.
I would not, but it would kind of be like a leveling stick, right? So that would kind of be interesting. I just call them the levelers. Check me out. I'm so level. Or not. No, I wouldn't wear piss shoes, but I would probably wear Satan shoes.
Really?
Yeah. I would also wear Satan shoes, a delicious wheat treat.
I mean, I guess it would depend on whose piss it was.
It could be anyone's piss. I probably wouldn't wear them. Even though we know piss is kind of sterile, right? It's sterile out of the Johnson, but after a while it does not become sterile.
What about 1 drop in each shoe from the artwork Piss Christ? Does that appeal more to your artistic sensibilities?
Urine does not appeal to me as a drip theme. Does it appeal to you?
No, but I think it's kind of the same as blood.
I think it's different. Blood is the source of life. Piss is could also be the source of life, but not in the same way. Are they missing an opportunity here? Is John Wall trying to get his hands on these Satan shoes, these blood shoes?
Oh, I mean, you do have the gang affiliation thing.
Yeah, and John Wall is no longer on Nike, I believe. But he should be rocking these, right? Like tonight he should be wearing them. I don't know if the Rockets are playing tonight, but what would Nike do now that John Wall's not a Nike athlete?
I don't know if he ever was a Nike guy.
I think they tried with him, no? I believe that was a John Wall signature.
No, that wasn't that Reebok?
If only there was a way to find out.
Yeah, we'll never know.
Would you, if you got your hand, how much would you pay for a pair of Lil Nas X 666 shoes? If you were a sneakerhead, hypothetically.
Oh. The problem is, and I'm not a sneakerhead, I feel like the price on those is all based on the retail market, or excuse me, the secondary market. So what would you pay to get one to wear them? Oh yeah, sure, I'll pay $100, great.
Yeah.
But if it's like, yeah, but if you buy them for this, then you can sell them for 10 times that amount, especially after Nike commands that they get destroyed. Like, well, it's an investment, and then you never end up wearing them anyway. You just put them in a box.
I mean, I love marketing, and I will always feel burned by that Todd McFarlane Spider-Man #1 fiasco, where I had to buy a black cover, a gold cover, a silver color, one in a bag, one with a UPC code, one with a Spider-Man face instead of a UPC code. And I got tricked because I was like, I got to get them all. Really, I had to get none. And with the Lil Nas X thing, it's funny because it triggers my fascination or my interest in this McFarlane thing. And I don't care at all about shoes. I love good shoes. Shout out to Good Shoes. But now that it's talked about and they're trying to destroy all 666, I'm like, how much are they going for? Like, I tried to Google trying to buy those Steph Currys that everyone made fun of, those dad Steph Currys. You can't get them. They're just not around. And I'm like,
How is that possible?
I think there was disinterest, and then it became a collector's item.
I have a couple pairs of shoes that I've worn into the ground that are really expensive.
Like what?
A DQM Bacon Air Max 90.
Those just got reissued, right? Like yesterday, 2 days ago.
I saw them going up because they were selling for like $700. I have one pair that's so beat.
Shout out to Lush. Yeah.
And then also I have a pair of the Kobe Grinches that they re-put out as well.
Oh, people want those. At our Cookies Hoops Classic, which is getting fired up again after we all get vaccinated, we gave away some nice rare shoes for our participants.
We really are just great guys.
I saw some SpongeBob's on that court. I don't know if those are expensive. Yeah, I think they're cheap.
Just an incredible event by incredible people.
Just like shout out to ex-Knicks players who won it all. They just wanted it more. Big Knicks summer.
Lil Nas X, he put out his video with him giving a lap dance to Satan, which as a Satanist I loved.
It was cool.
Are you listening to anything else right now besides the Lil Nas X Satan single?
Lately, okay, so there's this band, Manchester Orchestra, right? Emo, kind of like on the low. They play big rooms in New York. I believe I saw them at T5 during their album 2017 or something. They're having a new album. They're putting out a new album, I believe, this week or this month. On the press release, it says America's Best Rock Band. And I was like, yo, that's outlandish. And then I paused and I was like, yep, they're currently America's Best Rock Band.
I felt like The National, who I would not recognize if they ran up in my apartment and beat me with sticks, and I can't name one of their songs. I felt like they just had the claim to that for a little while. I don't know if that was because of reviews or a perception or Pitchfork or something, but I feel like The National was like America's best rock band.
So I love The National. I think they're awesome. The qualifications for that declaration was you still have to be relevant in putting out good albums now. Because obviously the Strokes are still around. Is This It is awesome. But they haven't been good for a little while, in my opinion. Bright Eyes is kind of a solo act. Bon Iver is kind of a solo act, in my opinion. I can't find another. I mean, The National is the one I thought of too. But, their last few albums haven't hit. This new Manchester Orchestra album is pretty good. Yo, let's go. Is it Haim, though? I love Haim. It might be Haim.
What about Queensryche?
Why? Is the new Queensryche good? What do you think?
I don't know. I'm just coming up with rock bands.
Have you ever listened to rock music?
I kind of like the dance rock era of like the mid 2000s.
You mean like what bands are we talking about? Like Electro Clash?
Yeah, that kind of like the yeah stuff like that.
Oh, they were incredible for sure. Like
that was the last era that I regularly listened to rock music.
Like did you listen to The Faint? Is that what you're talking about? Is that too obscure?
That's too obscure. Like Le Savy Fav.
You call them dance rock? I went to school with those guys.
Not them specifically, but that era. That was kind of the only time I was really up on stuff. Like the blog, like it was like the blog era.
Do you remember insound.com?
I don't know. I would check out Fader. What's Fader putting up there?
Fader did a great
Peter,
job.
Bjorn, and John. Shout out to Nick Ketchdubs.
I mean, Phoenix was also a suggestion, but that album came out like a long time ago at this point. But it's hard. I mean, I listen to Phoenix. I listen to like Beach House. just as good. I mean, the weekend, but I thought there was an interesting declaration because it's arguable and it could be right, and this is kind of like has an MVP conversation vibe. It's like there's no right answer, even though someone will think there is, but it just goes to show that like rock music isn't a thing anymore, right?
I think that's kind of what happened.
Yeah.
I don't really see people talking about it, and I don't know if that's in part a consequence of the move from like Pitchfork being an arbiter of what people listen to it just kind of being this natural cyclical what's on Spotify, what's on Twitter, what are people talking about on Instagram, and I don't know, but it does seem like we've reached a dead spot for rock over like the last almost 10 years at this point.
For sure. Like I think at the last Grammys, the Strokes won for Album of the Year Rock, and it wasn't even televised on its show. It was given out before the show.
I just don't see anyone talking about rock ever.
Haim, I think, is the one that people talk about, and I would say Haim is maybe the best rock band in America right now, because they go viral. Their outfits went viral for the Grammys. They crushed the Grammys, I thought, and that album is amazing.
I mean, we're not talking about Fiona Apple as rock, are we?
No, not at all.
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to think like rock, not like indie music or whatever.
Yeah. Like I don't. Yeah. I mean, what are the qualifications, right? A live drummer, a person who hits drums with sticks, guitars, and bass, and a singer. Maybe bass is not necessary.
Gang dance.
Wow, you're really living in 2003, man. That's your zone.
I don't know, man. So I'm gonna go get up to date on Manchester Orchestra.
Right. Have you ever heard of Manchester Orchestra?
No.
I'm telling you, it's not a thing. It's awesome. It's good music. I would not recommend it to you. And it's emo, and it's sad music, and he sings about sad boy stuff. But I kind of love it. I've loved this music for decades.
We say it's very similar to, say, Franz Ferdinand.
Oh my God! Did you stop listening to music like during Stillmatic?
It's like about the same time I stopped watching television.
It's like, are you still cruising around to Hell on Earth?
I listen to modern music that's not rock.
But does it sound rappy?
Some of it does.
Like you're about to you want to talk about someone who has nods to 90s rap, right?
I sure do. A good album that just came out. It's Alchemist, who you may know from the 90s.
This is a basketball podcast. We're talking basketball now.
He did all the production on a record from the rap group Arm & Hammer. And
he also got his COVID shot like 5 months ago.
Did he? I don't even know.
He qualifies.
Oh, now I see where you're going with this. And the album's called Harem. The cover features two severed pig's heads, which
that's
definitely got people really annoyed.
On brand with some Lil Nas X and Nick stuff, right? Go on.
Yeah, the album's excellent. It's
what's it sound like?
It's the instant comparison to me would probably be Cannibal Ox. That would just be that would be the obvious one, and that's not just me. I'm sure people will say that because it's very dense.
The
rapping.
Cold Vein is a good record.
Yeah, it's like that. It's dense rapping by two rappers who are in the group with an album that's produced by one guy. Songs are variable length. Everything kind of merges into each other. There's a lot of kind of background noise and audio clips. It has that same density. So I don't think they rap like those guys, but it's two rappers based out of New York with like very poetic, they're really, really good rappers. And I've known one of the guys from Arm & Hammer for like 15 years, and I'm really proud of him also. So I got to say that. That's my dude. And the album's great.
I'll give him a shot, but this doesn't sound like my cup of tea. But, I'll listen to anything. I'll try anything. But this might be my kryptonite, but we'll see. Anything in 2021 compared to Cannibal Ox seems like something I wouldn't jam.
I mean, I'm just saying the two rappers, one producer. It doesn't remind you of, I don't know, group home. Like, the guys have the rappers are really good. It's not like that the producer just put his foot in an album and whoever is over it is over it. You're not sold at all, are you?
No, but I respect your musical opinion.
Huh.
What vibe are they? Are they dark? Are they shrouded? Are they funny? What's going on?
A lot of their stuff was described as dystopian in the past. I would not say this is
some other music ass shit. You're right. I have loved bands like this, but I was also very young, and it was decades ago.
I would not say this album is like that. It has like soul samples. It doesn't. It does not strike me as being a particularly dark album. There's a lot of good one-liners in there.
Yeah. You had me a few weeks ago when you were talking to me about Pooh Shiesty, which is kind of more enjoyable, but also old school. Are you still listening to that?
Oh yeah,
that's good stuff. It's old in that it reminds me of Gooch a little bit, but that is old now.
I think the charm is that he sounds quite a bit like Gooch, Guap, Gucci Mane, and the production is a lot like Zaytoven-y.
It's nice, and also his visuals kind of are like Takeshi 6ix9ine. There's like it's goofy cartoons that are big and colorful, even puppets maybe if I'm not mistaken. But
those are the two albums that I've been listening to, Harem and Pooh Shiesty.
It's called
Shiesty Season.
It's called Harem.
Is the name of the album? Yeah.
What's the name of the group? Again?
Arm and Hammer.
Arm and Hammer Harem. Yo man, this sounds very 90s.
You're gonna love it.
I'm scared.
You love the 90s.
Well, I've been thinking a lot about Carmelo Anthony winning it all in Syracuse, so it might be up my alley this week.
I don't know. You're very adverse to rapidy rap, so I could see you not liking it.
I'm scared.
You don't even like good rapidy rap. You know me. I'm not a big rapidy rap fan, but you don't even like the good stuff.
I admit that Damn was a really good record. I wanted to not like that record, and then when I spent time with it, I'm like, this is really amazing, right? Kendrick's album, Damn.
I don't really listen to Kendrick too much.
I know, yeah, for good reason, but like that, very good record, man. I don't know. So I'm not opposed to it. I'll give everything a shot, but Pooh Shiesty's nice.
You love Joey Badass.
Oh, yo, Action Bronson lost a bunch of weight.
I read that article in the Times. It was a nice read.
That's cool. Should we talk about losing weight? Good for him, man. That's great news.
He lost some weight. He's doing some surfing. I thought the best anecdotes in the article were about how he would go into restaurants and eat something, and then run outside and like do some curls with like weights that he was carrying in his car.
That's called a disorder, but yeah, okay. Shout out to disorders too.
He's like, oh, I gotta earn this, so he'd eat like an ice cream sundae and then do like 50 squats right next to the table.
Yeah, that's not totally healthy, but better than smoking blunts and eating bad food. And shout out to smoking blunts and eating bad food. My first thought was, does this offend the body positive community? What's wrong with him originally? What was wrong with original version 1?
I think he makes it pretty clear that he couldn't walk or breathe, and like taking a shit was a problem and things like that.
Does he talk about dropping deuces?
He mentions going to the bathroom, which, I mean, if you remember anecdotes about Big Pun, and I don't think Bronson got that big, but Pun weighed something like, 700 pounds when he died? And he was not a tall dude.
And it's the reason probably why he died.
Right. So, but I mean, I remember hearing, I don't know if this was actually that public, but whatever, that, before he died, he was just staying in a hotel room that was like connected to the studio maybe. Yeah. And like he could barely move, and he had to have people like help wipe his ass because he was so enormous.
What?
I'm not saying that was the same thing with Bronson, but he did reference going to the bathroom, which is just like, it's hard to fit and do things when you're huge.
Yeah, man.
But like Pun's final days were wretched, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm all for it.
He broke his foot.
But
like due to weight.
like
pun.
stress factor stuff.
Yeah, when he was going around in a wheelchair.
Dude, that's crazy. And right, there had to have been an intervention sooner. Aside from the health stuff, which is for sure hard to talk about and dark, and I love when people get healthy. Does it change like artistically what the person is? I'm thinking of Adele, right? Adele was this like maybe the most loved artist of her generation. She lost a ton of weight and kind of got glam, right? Does that change her artwork? Do fans kind of take a second look at her, and does like the tone shift?
I'm trying to think. In some ways, people stopped caring about Gucci when he
He got
cleaned up his
super
act.
healthy. Yeah.
But that was
good
also
one,
he
yeah.
came out of prison and became really healthy and got ripped. But he was also kind of past his peak as an artist. If that had happened in his prime, I don't think people would have
Sure.
cared about it. I'm trying to think of other artists who like lost a ton of weight. Like Fat Joe lost weight, but again,
He's still kind
guys typically do it when they're like older in life, not when they're like 23 years old and like the hottest rapper out.
So my question to you was obviously, what would have happened if Biggie wasn't tragically cut? His life wasn't tragically cut short, and he lost a bunch of weight and got skinny.
I don't know. Like, is this like an existential crisis? Is Biggie still Biggie without being fat?
His name is Biggie. Like, what happens to Big Baby when he's Lil Baby?
There's got to be an example. Some rapper had to be fat and get skinny.
Action Bronson. But we never listened to Action Bronson, so like it's hard to tell. Right?
Bronson's still not small.
Sure. Right. Hopefully he'll get skinny. I don't know. I wish health on everyone, but
Say it like a curse.
I don't want to offend. No kink shaming, or I don't want to offend people. I love body positivity too. I'm a short guy who has accepted it. I can't get any taller, but I can get skinnier.
I don't think the body positive community frowns upon weight loss necessarily. I think they frown upon people celebrating weight loss.
When we're done recording, I'll email you this website you should check out. Well, I'll just say it. It's called www.twitter.com, where you can find everyone who hates everything for free.
I bet there's some people who disagree with me on there.
Yeah, you could find someone who disagrees with your opinion on this website. You should check it out.
It sounds cool.
It's very cool.
Speaking of disagreements, there's been a lot of chatter on the www.twitter. Am I getting that right?
I believe so.
About how the NBA buyout season is fucking up the competitiveness of the NBA. How do you feel about that?
I'm really worried about the state of our... And I got to get serious. I know Cookies is kind of a jokey tone to it sometimes. But
I know.
First it was James Harden, and now it's the buyout. I'm really worried about our game, man. There's not enough leprechauns with not enough hardware in the NBA.
I hear you, man. I mean, our precious game is being befouled by the players. The players who are doing it. The guys who are on the court running around and dribbling and dunking that we love, I gotta tell you, they're ruining this sport.
Andre, how could you? How could you? We had such a perfect thing, Andre, and you just had to go and get bought out.
We had this sport that had peaked, and then big Andre Drummond, a galoot, has to go and pervert it.
Perverted monks.
Hate that guy for what he did to the sport.
I mean, the rich just get richer. What are we doing? These coastal elites.
So what we're talking about here is that after the trade deadline is over and teams deal and wheedle and make maneuvers to either improve
their
their
bibs
team.
on.
They put their bib on and they dine. They dine down to that deadline
They
wire.
feast on those buckets of buyout candidates.
So after that's over, when teams have high-priced veterans a lot of the time who have no future with that team and no trade value because their contracts are expiring, usually, the guys will get bought out. They'll say, hey, you can go do something else for the next 4 months. You don't have to be here in Cleveland with the rest of us yokels. So Drummond, Kevin Love,
didn't get buyout.
Just beat it.
Did Kevin Love? Oh.
Excuse me, I meant Blake Griffin. Kevin Love has 2 more years on that contract. He's not getting bought out yet.
It's kind of good, but I can't say healthy.
But right, I'm sorry, I misspoke with him. I meant Blake Griffin. So those guys were in Detroit. Drummond was in Cleveland. The team has no use for them in the future, and just basically said, all right, let's reach an agreement. We'll save a couple $1 million, and you can go on your way. And in these cases, we had Drummond signed with the Lakers. We had Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge signed with the Brooklyn Nets. And people are really mad about this. Like, this is ruining the competitiveness of basketball.
People brought up.
Is there an argument though? Can that be defended, that position?
For sure. These are the wrong examples, though. I think Drummond's the closest, right? Because I think Drummond at this point would be underrated. He's not. He's a league average player who volume rebounds, like not someone you want to play against. I think Aldridge and Griffith are reasonably washed, even though they are still very smart players who know what they're doing. Yeah, the argument is always there that like it's frustrating to have a hypothetical competitive balance be lopsided, but like it's always going to be lopsided. There's no such thing as defending parity, because in a free market, like you're going to have people who value other things over you, like offer someone some money or incentivize somebody for moving somewhere. And we're talking about the Brooklyn Nets, like a big market, but like I don't know, like these examples don't make as much sense. Like I think there was a beef with the CP3 David Stern situation because the league owned the Hornets, and so he had access to kind of work an angle of that deal, and we understood what he was trying to do. He just made an egregious error, right? Like the error was in the collective bargaining agreement, not that Chris Paul was going to the Lakers.
I'm trying to figure out how these things are wrapped together so that I can respond to both. I mean, I think the irony that I'm just going to point out pretty obviously is that Dan Gilbert is the owner of the Cavs, who was absolutely furious when the league decided that they would accept a Chris Paul. Excuse me, when the Chris Paul trade was proposed by the front office of the Hornets, in which he was going to go to the Lakers, Dan Gilbert lost his shit and wrote a letter to everyone involved in the NBA saying, like, we're not the Washington Generals. We can't have 25 teams who are just a farm system for, like, the Lakers or whatever. And then, of course, he's the one whose team says, yeah, we're just going to let Drummond go and, see where this guy ends up. I bet this won't affect the outcome of this season at all.
I think Dan Gilbert's family probably loves him. I'm sure he has people in that organization who think he's like a great guy. They'll put on bibs with him. They'll break some bibs with him, maybe eat some crustaceans. To me, he doesn't seem that chill. So,
No.
He yells a lot, and, he's a Comic Sans god. And he also represents what a lot of people on Twitter.com think about these things, and which is reasonable, sure. It's like it's frustrating when a team you don't enjoy gets good players who you think are good players. That sucks because you want those players. You want to be as good as the Lakers. But me and like hypocrisy. It's just like, of course he's going to contradict himself. That's what happens when you're not that chill, right? But yeah, the irony is, he can justify it by being like, well, we set this precedent and now I have to just comply. It's not my fault.
I don't, at this point, looking at the buyout market, I think the bad guys are very clearly the teams, even though if they're not going to play these guys, then they're better off cutting them loose and letting these guys choose where they want to go. So
it's an act of mercy, kind of.
I agree. I'm saying if we're going to blame someone, you got to blame the teams, right? Yeah. I mean, you just have to, because the players aren't the ones who control this. So you can't say, yeah, but Drummond, why don't you go to the Hornets? Because he can go where the fuck he wants.
Yeah.
So
His
the
friends
teams,
are in LA.
Yeah, the teams are the ones creating this buyout marketplace because they're buying players out. If they just refused, it wouldn't exist. So the teams are the ones at fault. But I'm not also that upset at why they're doing it. It makes sense for them and it makes sense for the guys. So
I like it. Yeah.
I think if you were going to solve it, and when I say solve it is obviously implying that there's a problem, I think there's a little bit of an issue just where you say, all right, there's a handful of teams they're going to have this, advantage, and like this wasn't something that existed 15 years ago. It's a relatively newer phenomenon, especially the teams rebuilding and there being shorter contracts. I think that's a big part of this as well, because now that the max contract, if it's not someone who's on your team, is 4 years, teams are willing to cut bait on guys who they kind of viewed as being a star, and the expiring contracts have value. So you end up with someone like Drummond is a good example, being on Cleveland, who acquired him for a second-round pick last year, let him play a quarter of the season, and said, actually, we're done with you too. We're going to try to trade you again. Drummond didn't do anything wrong here. Detroit's just dumped him.
No.
Then
He's
Cleveland,
a victim here. Yeah.
Cleveland played him half the year, couldn't get anything for him, and then had him sit out and said, yeah, stay healthy. We'll trade you, man. So, I mean, Drummond can do whatever he wants. I just think if you're going to tweak this ecosystem a bit, I think it would have to be like a financial thing. And, of course, that still benefits a team like Brooklyn or the Lakers. But maybe you say, like, you are eligible or you are on the hook for, say, like what's left on their contract towards the cap. Right. And if you're over the cap, that means that it would be doubled or tripled if it was a repeater penalty, etc. Yeah. So like Brooklyn, like you actually can't get Blake Griffin for $1 million, but you could get him for like $15 million.
Yeah, I agree. That's a way
I don't know. And that would be my only solution. So like, in this way, people can still move around, but teams would actually have to consider whether it was worth the financial investment.
Yeah. I mean, I'm such a big draft boy that I see teams who kind of prioritize the like kind of socialist aspect of the league and like maybe not care about winning as much. So let's say the Cavs are like, yo, we kind of want to get Jalen Suggs or just be in the market for one of these top 5 players. I'm like, ooh, that's smart. So I don't even think of them as suffering that much. I think of them as
I agree.
doing well and taking advantage of the protections that the league provides. And then these players, like Andre Drummond, who have done nothing wrong, can go to the place of their choice. I'm like, this is all good. Everyone wins here, right?
The issue, though, is that it circumvents the salary cap. That's the real issue.
I hate the salary cap.
Sure, but it circumvents it in a way that doesn't even require people to pay more money or even earn more money. That's why it's a subject of a lot of grief. And I do agree with that, because you're saying for 11 months of the year that this is an econometric league. That's what matters. You like use your cap space wisely. You're going to get taxed on this amount. And then during this like couple week period of buyout season, it's like, oh yeah, this guy Andre Drummond who's making $25 million this year, yeah, you can get him for $1 million.
And that's where Stern miscalculated the CP3 thing, right? He created the cap hoping to create parity. And then CP3 was kind of the first star who was like, I'm willing to take less money to play with my friends and form this super team in LA. I will take less money so they can afford me. And Stern was like, oh, I didn't account for somebody not hitting their ceiling at every point. And I think that's a really interesting thing. Kirk Goldsberry put out an article maybe 2 weeks ago about his maybe solution to this, which is something we've been saying, part of which is something we've been saying on Cookies for years. Whereas a person like LeBron James is probably one of the most underpaid humans on earth. So him being capped under the salary cap is kind of like unethical. It's just annoying. So Kirk Goldsberry proposed this idea of a mega max, which is like you can bid on LeBron James up to like past what the maximum contract is now. You can double it. So if he makes double, it kind of handcuffs the team into acquiring an AD or or someone else to entice a Drummond to come over. You know, it kind of changes the parameters of it, being like these top tier superstars, and we're only talking about like 5 or 6 or 7 players that are in the MVP discussion. Giannis probably should double his salary now, and that would kind of constrain what the Bucks can do and prevent players from just like migrating there because of the situation.
I mean, that could work, but for the most part, whenever they've tried to do these kind of machinations, it's ended up sort of backfiring. Because when they created the Supermax contracts, that's one of the reasons that Kemba didn't go back to Charlotte. And that's one of the reasons that Boogie Cousins got traded. Because teams looked at them, bad teams who had no other star, and said, I might have been okay to pay you the max, but I'm not paying you the Supermax because you were on the All-NBA team. Now I'm just going to let you walk. Now I'm just going to trade you, and you won't be eligible for that on your new team.
Yeah.
And this has kind of been the trend overall since what you're talking about started beginning. When they started doing the cap, they ended up emphasizing lifestyle and a chance to win because
happiness.
Everyone can pay happiness because everyone can pay you the same amount of money.
Yep.
You know, and then you add in the variables of like Texas or Florida not having income tax or climate, and you know, sneaker companies saying, well, if you go to LA, we'll pay you another $10 million a year. You're like, cool, that's the difference between what Minnesota could have paid me anyhow.
Dude, Dan Gilbert's whole career as an owner is predicated on LeBron James's whist, right? He wanted to win one where he grew up. That was his only motivation of going back to Cleveland. So like all these human factors play into it, and the sad part of the idea of parity inside sports and outside of sports, it's like it's really hard to achieve. And I think the NBA wants to create a situation where Oklahoma City Thunder fans have every opportunity to root for their team as much as like an LA team or a Brooklyn team. But it's hard to achieve that because every step along the way, whether it be the salary cap, the draft, the lottery, max contracts, this is like maybe even constraining the roster size of a team. This is all really hard to do when you factor in LeBron James's whist or someone's preference for a different climate. And I don't think the aspiration to parity is commendable, but I think we should stop thinking about it.
I also don't think the NBA wants parity anyway. So they have to strike this balancing act between major markets having all these superstars, which is good for the league. It's good for the league having Brooklyn and the Clippers and the Lakers relevant. The Knicks playing fairly well. That's good for the league. Is Giannis sticking out the rest of his career in Milwaukee good for the league?
No.
Fuck no. The league doesn't believe that, but they have to at least publicly be like, wow, amazing, just as we intended. We incentivized him staying in Milwaukee. Meanwhile, they're like, God damn it, dude. Couldn't you have gone to like Dallas or Miami?
And I kind of call bullshit on fans who are like, yes, Giannis staying in Milwaukee is helpful for the league because it creates some environment where you don't have to be a coastal elite to have a contender. I'm like, you just don't like Giannis, because if it was a player you wanted, you'd sing a different tune. Giannis is not that well loved, as we're finding out with this MVP stuff, right?
Well, the other only point I wanted to make though was where I am sympathetic towards people who are annoyed by the buyout market is just for example, I'm looking at the numbers now. Like Drummond made $27 million this year. Overpaid, sure. But this is a guy who's had a max contract for 4 years. What'll he make next year? I don't know. It will not be $27 million.
No.
Because he's sort of, even though he's a fairly young player, he's one of the best rebounders ever. He's kind of, we've seen the trajectory of his career and how it ties in with the changes in the game. We know who he is. He's a good player, but he's not a star.
He's about to get Roy Hibberted.
But the point here is that he is making $27 million this year, and the Lakers are paying him $800,000. Like, that's kind of horseshit.
Nah, I disagree.
I mean, it's horseshit because, like, he's getting incredibly underpaid not to join the best team. And, I think he should get all this money. But
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I understand why people are annoyed when you're like, this guy is making a league minimum. He's not a league minimum player. We know that.
He might be, man. But
He's not a league minimum player.
I mean, if you're gonna say he was a league maximum player, we have to look at his market value. If you're claiming his big contract was his market value, then his current contract is his market value. Other teams wanted him.
But we don't have his current contract
Is ceremonial.
Is ceremonial, yeah. I mean, his current value is $27 million.
There's teams who wanted him, and there's teams that knew they couldn't get him, so that's kind of like a noisy thing to bring up. But like,
well, I mean, he's getting all of his money anyway, so he has
I
no
don't care about
incentive.
that.
I'm saying he doesn't have any incentive to say like, I'll sign for $5 million from you because he's getting all his money.
I don't know how he thinks about his money. He might be someone who's like, I want more, like, and
He can't get more.
no, in life, he might be a more
No,
guy.
I'm saying the buyout thing. He can't get more.
I'm saying
Because
in life.
his new contract that he gets, I believe, depending on how it's worked out, would cut into the money that the Cavs own.
In life, if he's a guy who's like, I want to maximize everything, that's different than someone who's just like, I'm willing to sacrifice this for happiness or whatever. I'm not even talking about money. I'm talking about opportunity, future earnings, all that stuff, afterwards. 800,000 is ceremonial. It might as well be 0 or 800 million, whatever. It doesn't matter. This number is just to make people happy. It's not. I'll never have $800,000 in my bank account. So like, that's pretty impressive. But like, it's like, I think his value is exactly his value. He's really good, and other teams wanted him. Him joining the Lakers does not make them obvious championship favorites. It helps them, but so does Luke Cornett in Boston. And
Look, I don't care about him tilting the balance. I'm saying it is horseshit for a team that is over the cap to be able to get a guy who on paper this year makes $27 million for a league minimum. That's all I'm saying. When we talk about how important the cap is and how delicately you have to make decisions based on things and trading off guys because you don't want to pay them, your draft picks, all this intricate maneuvering to get under the cap, and then you get a guy who on paper is worth $28 million. I don't think he's really worth $28 million. I don't even think he changes the dynamics of the league in a major way, where I'm now fear the Lakers in a way that I didn't before. But he is not a league minimum player. He's a guy who literally made $28 million this year. And that's where I'm saying I'm sympathetic. Like, I don't give a shit about Blake Griffin. I don't give a shit about LaMarcus Aldridge. I barely care about Drummond joining the Lakers. That doesn't bother me. But when you say the cap is important, and that's how teams get built, and you have this weird glitch where guys are getting signed for nothing, where they didn't have to give up assets, they didn't have to juggle space, they just get someone new. I mean, it's kind of not cool.
so this is what I'm saying. And totally, I mean, you're against this, which is totally, totally valid.
Just to clarify, I don't really care as much about the talent. I care more about the economic part being like so central to team building. Like, this is what it's about, and then this being completely out of the blue in some ways.
And that's where I bring up talent, because attaching someone's identity to their contract is something we can't do, because contracts are about timing, contracts are about taste, and opportunity, and those things are very movable kind of ideas, and they kind of shift based off perception, year to year, month to month. And like, Joakim Noah made a ton of money with the Knicks. As soon as he signed that contract, we knew he was probably not gonna see the end of that contract. The minute he signed that dotted line for Phil Jackson, we were like, is he a league minimum player? Maybe, maybe not. But he became paid. So it's hard to that's why I bring up talent, because it's hard to equate Andre Drummond with his previous contract, because it's
my point is that it was not his previous contract; it's his current contract.
Okay,
that's what I'm saying. It's not like the Lakers really had to outbid anyone. It's not like they had to pay him market rate. It wasn't as if like, hey, the Pelicans are here and they're willing to pay him 12. Like, it was just, I'm going to go play for you for free because I'm getting my money.
Do you know why it's for me, it's the wrong discussion because these numbers don't mean anything to me. And like, they're always, in my opinion, and I'd say to me on purpose, because these are all debatable values. And every free agency, I'm like, I wouldn't have done that, but some team did. Is that player worth $24 million? I can't attach that because this is a taste.
But you have to attach it, though. You have no choice because
with the
that's
cap.
their right. That's what I mean. Like their value is literally only what that number is when it comes to the cap, and that's why something like the Drummond is such an affront to like the notion that like cap rules all.
I mean, I like that.
No, you know what I mean, though? No one's anything except their number. That's all they are. Like, you can take away the names, and it's just a list of like, you can, scramble them, and it's just a little, like, 64532AB, like 27 million.
But he was free, and certain teams bid on him, and he chose to go places. And from what we know, certain teams didn't bid on him, and for a reason, right? Whether it be they had someone in that position, they didn't like his game, whatever. Someone on the team didn't like, like we'll never know everything about everything. But as soon as you take away his cap hit and make him free, we found out what his market is, and it was a pretty big market.
That's not true.
Oh, what?
Like, we didn't find out his market was. We'll find out what his market is maybe next season.
We found out what his buyout market was.
No.
There's certain teams that didn't bid on him.
Because he was going to the Lakers, and everyone knew that. It was either Lakers, Brooklyn, or the Knicks. I'm saying it wasn't as if a team could have said, "Hey, we'll give you $10 million." Like,
as I said when I said that, there's a lot we'll never know about stuff like this. But we have a picture of what Andre Drummond is in a buyout market because we saw it, and it's not the whole picture because we'll never know everything. But we know he wasn't like he's coveted. Like he went to the Lakers. Everyone's like, huh. Either you put your ribeye on the grill and you were like 90s rap, or you were just like, does he help the team?
Right. I'm saying we're going in circles here, but the point that I'm trying to make about the buyout market is that it actually removes money from the equation even more than it typically is. And we've seen that happen over and over and over. And the buyout market is probably the most distilled version of that, right? Where all these things like the salary cap have worked to create an environment where players go for, as we said, climate, winning, lifestyle, endorsements, etc. And this is like the purest, absolute version of it, where it's like, all right, the Cavs are paying your salary. Where would you like to play? And he's like, I want to play in LA for a championship team with LeBron. It's like, that's why the buyout market is kind of like interesting and funny. Because it's the exact opposite of everything that the NBA claims to not want. So, like, they're going to do something about it, I think. People are going to be annoyed. But the NBA, again, they don't have a problem with, like, stars going to LA or Brooklyn, though. So, it's an interesting dynamic. But I think that's my actual point, though, is that it's absolute freedom for Drummond, which I like. But it's also, like, the exact refutation of, like, the salary cap and the entire econometric system of the NBA.
I find it interesting. Like we're watching a bunch of Zoomers and millennials play on the court, but the league caters to boomers, and the capitalist kind of like, or like the structure which we find older people find unfair and fair in the league, and players are just like, well, like when Draymond Green came to Andre Drummond's defense, being like, you guys dog these players all the time, but like Drummond is not mad that he's not playing, but like he doesn't want to be in this situation. He got traded to Cleveland. Now Cleveland's going to bench him, and he's not that mad, but like fix on something else. Like fixate on something else here, because it's not the player, it's not the rules, it's just like kind of this new reality. So we have to, like, until they change the rules, you got to accept the consequences, right?
Yeah, and we also knew this was going to happen with Brooklyn for sure. I mean, once they acquired James Harden and they really had no front line to speak of, we were basically saying all season, look, these three guys are unbelievably talented. If they're healthy, they're going to be hard to beat. But this is not what they're going to look like later on, because they're going to get guys in the buyout market. Like
For sure,
we
yeah.
just knew this was going to occur.
LeBron too, yeah.
I would have been more worried about Brooklyn if they got, I don't know, Drummond and Jang or even like Cornette, like some other guys. I have no worries about LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin as being meaningful guys who are going to tilt a series with Brooklyn. I actually think they kind of struck out, to be honest.
I agree. Shout out to those two great players. And I was thinking,
Yeah, they're okay. They're okay.
yeah, I think they had good careers and like great careers. And I was thinking about when the Knicks were hot and heavy into LaMarcus Aldridge. Remember that summer? They were just like, LaMarcus is the one we want, and he didn't give them a meeting, famously. And I was about to have the take being like, sure, dodged a bullet. And then I looked at his numbers in at the Spurs, and he's kind of an outdated player, and he's not coveted as a modern, having a modern point of view in the NBA now. But he had some good seasons in San Antonio, and Popovich used him right, and I thought he would have been a good player in New York for sure. But at this point, like, in a pinch you can use him, but you can switch on to him and kind of like roast him in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think he's fine to have coming off the bench. Same with Blake Griffin.
Yeah.
But I didn't look at it and say they solved their biggest issue.
No,
Like they needed like a real defensive center on that team. Look, they are still probably the favorite to win a title. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I didn't look at those two acquisitions and say, well, they've sewn it up. They put their bib on. They're going to feast. Yeah. There's nothing we can do except put on our own bibs and bib it up.
I wanted I wanted there to be more Tuckers out there, because like Milwaukee, in theory they got better defensively, but he's kind of washed, and there was no personnel. The inventory wasn't there for the Nets to kind of do something. And Drummond was the guy. I agree. If they got Drummond, I'd be like, that's a really nice fit for Brooklyn. But I think Brooklyn struck out. I think the Bucks did good, and I think the Lakers did good.
I thought the Heat did a good job. I thought getting Bjelica was a nice pickup.
That was a trade, right?
But that was more of a, and then, trade. In the buyout market, the Heat had been rumored to have Aldridge headed in that way, and obviously he didn't. And then, again, I thought Jang would have been probably one of the better pickups, and he ended up going to the Spurs. So,
yeah, I mean, we talked months ago about Jang being a nice fit for the Sixers, but, there's only 2 times in world history. It's before B-Ball Paul and after B-Ball Paul. And we're after B-Ball Paul, so he's the one.
I mean, very briefly, Sixers stuff.
Let's do it.
I think I like Doc Rivers. He has got guys playing hard. They're on the same page. Doc clearly has people playing in a way where no one seems to be conflicted about getting their own numbers and the good of the team. There's never a guy who seems to put up a shot because it's kind of their turn to get one up. And I felt like that happened under Brett Brown some, where guys sort of took turns and
they ate a little bit, right?
Well, you could sense if someone felt as if they weren't getting their share. And I don't get that visibly from this Sixers team. They seem really focused and united on the goal at hand, and I do credit Doc with them playing this style. I don't think that their improvement on the court is as tied to Doc as people would let you believe, because I think Brett Brown was a totally fine coach who you could have penciled in for 50 wins every single year, even with personnel that didn't always make sense. So I'm not here to relitigate Brett Brown because I know he was a good coach. His record speaks for itself. He was a good X's and O's guy. But on that topic, I am a little concerned by Doc's rotations and some of his what's the best way of describing his predilections, if you will.
Do you have did you see something this week?
Well, look, this is a guy in Doc Rivers who, started out as a point guard on the Riley Knicks. He won a title with the Celtics, who started Kendrick Perkins and Kevin Garnett. he does not use stretch fives. You look at his experience with the Clippers. It's all, conventional bigs, lob catchers, post-up players, whether it's Trez or Zub or DeAndre Jordan, or you use guys like Big Baby or Brandon Bass. Other than Maurice Spates, I can't think of a five who could really shoot at all on the Doc Rivers Clippers teams offhand. And you see how reluctant he is to go small. And it's been noticeable in the games against the Knicks, against Golden State, against the Clippers. And I think it'll be camouflaged when Joel Embiid comes back and rotations are more solid. But I'm just disappointed as someone who looked at Joe's injury as at least a chance to see some creative basketball and some weird lineups and see Simmons out there cooking. I think this guy has MVP talent. I think in a different situation, he'd be listed as an annual MVP candidate. And to see him just get hamstrung by goofy lineups night in and night out, that sucks. That sucks. It was just not cool that Doc won't leave his comfort zone, which is, big men, defense, enough to let them get out there and rip and roar. And that's just kind of a bummer as a fan of the team and a fan of these players, and you want to see them do some interesting stuff. And they're just out there engaging in bloodbaths every night with dog shit teams.
I mean, it's interesting because you bring up Joe, and who's obviously hurt, and we're talking about Doc's point of view without his MVP guy. But we're talking about Joe and Ben, who are up for MVP and Defensive Player of the Year this year, right? So it's hard to, and I agree with all that. It's hard to kind of put those two thoughts together. Ben Simmons is being hamstrung, but he might win Defensive Player of the Year. Joel Embiid was not hamstrung, but why can't Doc Rivers get value out of the supporting cast like he does Joe, right?
I mean, I think the supporting cast does a good job when they're out there with Ben and Joe. I think that's what they're most equipped to do. But Doc also doesn't like splitting up Joe and Ben into two different lineups. He plays his starters together, and he kind of does the hockey switch and brings in five guys. Started using Tobias in those lineups. But those groups, their offense sucks too. So I'm not that concerned because in the playoffs, you're going to have their stars on the court most of the time. They do have real high-powered players, some great lineups. And if those are on the court for 36 minutes a game, they should be fine. But this is not the best that you can get out of the Sixers team. And I think you've seen Morey, the GM, kind of indicating that he wants them to be more creative. And he said it twice, once at the beginning of the season and once recently. If Doc wants to, use some lineups with Ben and with Ben and Tobias at the 5 and 4, he can do that. He clearly wants them to do it. And when you look at the numbers, it's obvious. Groups that have Simmons, Harris, and Dwight Howard are awful. They're some of the worst lineups in the league. They fucking suck. And they keep getting trotted out over and over and over, despite failing repeatedly. And that's on Doc. They can't score. They're awful. And he's like, nope, bring them out there. But he won't use lineups with Simmons at the 5, even though the numbers on some of those are fantastic. It's really some stubborn shit, man. So I do like Doc, and I'm not that concerned about these issues down the line. But this does feel like a squandered opportunity to see B-Ball Paul, to try Ben Simmons at the 5, just to get some data on lineups that aren't the ones that are currently failing.
Yeah, man. How do you think this MVP race is shaping up? Do you Joel Embiid missing some games? It's tough to see him not out there, but do you have him in the top 3 at this point?
I think Joe is out. I think LeBron is out.
Is it because, obviously because they're not playing games, right?
Yeah, I think both of them, there's too many good candidates to miss a lot of games. I think Joe and LeBron, unless they finish with just fury and are incredible. Embiid might get back this weekend. And if he comes back, I think people will sort of forget about him missing games. He wasn't out that long.
What are the qualifications for you for MVP?
I don't care about missing some games. but you can't miss a lot. So I think Joe will be right on the fringe of that because they rest him sometimes and they should continue to. He missed a couple games, but if he had just said he's a sore ankle and missed some games, I don't think people would have talked about it. But it was like a visible thing of Embiid going down and clutching his leg, and we thought he was done for the year. If it had just been like, oh yeah, he's got a sprained thumb and he missed this exact same amount of games, I don't think people would have cared that much.
I also think it depends on when you miss games. Joe missed them, and LeBron is missing them, and Steph too, who just came back last night at the wrong time. If you do it early, like Harden, people tend to forget. If you do it late, everyone's like, well, it's been decided. You're kind of stuck in your seed and your identity going into the playoffs. I think these two guys missed it at the wrong time for voters because this is essentially like a vibey award, right? It's how you feel about something. It's not data based.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think how many games has Harden played right now. I mean, Harden's played 31 total games, which is like more than anyone.
Yo, he's always like the knock on him being lazy and selfish are like couldn't be farther from the truth. It's true he did dog some games in Houston, but he had to do it to get out of there, right? And now he's just like rolling. So when he was like, just give me the MVP trophy, I'm like, sure, you can have it. I mean, all 5, 6, 7 of these guys deserve it. My guy's Jokic for sure.
So wait, hold on. Let me look at the numbers here. I did not research this. So Harden has played in 40 total games.
Out of?
Some guys have played in up to like 48.
That's fine. That's good enough for me.
Someone like Wiggins. So he's played in 40. Embiid has played in 31.
Does this matter? At some point, it does matter, right? Like you just can't be Kevin Durant and win it.
And LeBron has played in 41.
LeBron is wild. He was playing big minutes too. He was like top 10 in minutes for a while. But yeah, I agree. Like KD was in the MVP running until he mysteriously went down and still chilling, and you have to take him out of it because he hasn't played enough games.
Well,
but
what's the resistance in your opinion to Jokic being MVP? I mean, the guy's played 46 of 48 games, so he fits the the health and minutes requirements.
Yeah.
He's crushing in advanced metrics. I think he's maybe leading the league in like BPM and things like that. His counting stats are just absurd at this point. I mean, this is a guy who's putting up 27 points a game, 11 rebounds, 8.5 assists, a steal and a half. Just bonkers. And Denver is pretty good. Like, why are people being resistant to this idea of Jokic as the MVP?
I think there's a big man bias. I think there's market. I think he's a white European, white boy summer. Are Europeans white? This is another discussion. They're just Europeans.
Right.
They're fair. They're fair in complexion. But I think, to me, it was because initially the Nuggets were kind of underwhelming. And of course, that's because of Jamal Murray, right? Who is like Jamal Crawford plus. Jamal Murray's not a superstar. Jokic is a bona fide superstar. I think he gets into the Hall of Fame probably. And he, as you said, not only are his numbers gaudy, when you watch him with your eyes, bro, if you're even watching the games,
If you watch the games,
bro, he's incredible. Like, he's just kind of a magician out there. I think the knock on him was the Nuggets kind of losing a few games. But to me, I could easily just reconcile that in my brain and say they'd be even worse without him. He's the one keeping them in the playoff hunt. Without him, they're just a lottery team. With him, they're kind of like a 6, 7, 8 seed, maybe even better.
They lost Jeremy Grant, who was a
awesome
sizable part of their success last year. And
Michael Porter Jr. has been great, but not what they hoped at times, right?
He's a useful player. He's talented.
Yeah. But they were expecting him to kind of become a big 3 situation.
But, even this year with Jokic, I mean, when he's on the court, they're beating the shit out of other teams, and when he goes off the court, they get a lot worse. So, he fits every criteria. I think there's also some lingering perception that he's like a bad defensive player.
He's a good defensive player.
And that the Nuggets aren't a real contender. I think that's part of it. Like, people might be, not everyone, of course, but there's a certain segment of the population who would say, I think Beal deserves it ahead of him just because he's like having a huge year. He's tearing it up down there in Washington.
Yeah.
Where people just don't really love a sloth-like center Serbian guy who's like a great passer. But I do think the perception against him has softened though. Like
His numbers are too good.
People were really huge doubters of him early in his career, and he was viewed really as being one side of kind of the eye test games watchers versus like stat nerds, because he didn't play a lot of minutes. He didn't have gaudy point totals. You could tell he was amazing and he did all these incredible things, but he wasn't a good defensive player. And he really was viewed as like the antithesis of like the Anthony Davis in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think when I say there was a size bias there, I think it's like, I always call it dribble bias, right? Luka is visually clearly a great talent. And what I hear on that website, www.twitter.com, sometimes is Jokic is just so big. What are you supposed to do with him out there? If another player was that big, they could do the same thing. And that's kind of softened a bit because his numbers have been so good.
And he just plays with such creativity and joy.
He's awesome, yeah.
You know, Shaq got a lot of that kind of feedback. When he was so strong, he could just shoulder people under the basket and dunk on them.
He's still getting that on TNT.
It's like, oh, I hate Shaq. You know, he couldn't dribble, he couldn't shoot. All he could do was dunk.
If Kobe was as big as Shaq, yeah.
You know, anyone could be as good as Shaq if they were his size. But Jokic, I think, he's so gifted and so, like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like paranormal passing.
Yeah.
He's a precog, man.
Yeah, it's a different dimension.
He sees the court, you know, several moves ahead, and he creates space for his players to score that wasn't there.
And he wills his teammates to do things out of their character because he can see the play before the play, right?
Yeah, when you watch, say, Giannis pass, Giannis is a good passer, and
He's nice.
you know he's a totally functional passer. He attacks the paint, he gets help, he kicks the ball out to an open man. He is a willing passer. He generally sends it the right direction, but it's like based on a static set. Every now and then, Giannis will find a backdoor cutter or something. You know, that happens because he draws so much attention that someone on the baseline can just slip to the basket. He can find those guys. But it's different when Jokic has the ball at like the elbow and just starts maneuvering and guys cutting around. And when you play with a guy who's that good of a passer, you start looking for ways for him to find you. And it really does have, I think, a cyclic effect where he's looking for people. They know that if they make a smart cut, they can get the ball. And it just has an incredible effect on an offense.
Yeah, and the reason I love this MVP debate, usually, but especially this year, because it's like a philosophical debate, right? Like, the reason I asked what you cared about is because, like, your choice this year kind of, like, tells you what people care about. And I think it's all valid. I can't find a reason to not care about winning teams. It's like, well, the MVP should come from a contender. I'm like, that's totally true. The Nuggets are not, but it maybe should come from LA or Brooklyn. It's like, but Harden has Kyrie Irving and Jokic doesn't. I'm like, this is also true. So it's just like, you have to be a lone wolf to be an MVP, or do you have to be a gaudy stat guy? Does Harden just win it because his stats are better? Like, right. I love this stuff.
And the one thing that is really important for people to remember here is that Giannis is not eligible. He is not an eligible candidate.
Is this breaking news?
People should know this. It should be self-apparent. But Giannis is not an MVP candidate. It doesn't matter what he does. Great player. He's not a candidate for MVP.
Just because he's won it last year?
He's completely non-eligible this year. Doesn't matter what he does.
Yeah.
He could top every single one of his stats. They could go undefeated. Doesn't matter. He's not a candidate. We've moved past a need as a society for a Giannis MVP candidate three-peat.
If you put Russell Westbrook's stats during his MVP season and just added them to Jokic, just like maybe averaging 50 points a game, he still does not get MVP. You cannot give it to him again because it's the law of MVP, right?
Yeah, no, these are the rules. I don't make them up. Giannis is not a candidate. Look, you want a candidate? How about Russell Westbrook averaging a triple-double again? You like that? Does that get you excited? Russell Westbrook?
They gave it to him.
Who cares, man?
They gave it to him the first time because it was unprecedented fair, and then they gave it to him a second time because they had to make up for the first time.
No, Russ only got one.
Oh, I thought he got repeat. He averaged a triple-double twice. Oh, right, because it was like he has the same season.
He's done it 4 times in a row.
Russell Westbrook is awesome, man.
He averages. He did it. Yeah, he did it. Oh, he did it 3 times in a row. The triple-double. Yeah. He did it in 17, 18, 19.
Yeah.
And then he's doing it right now, and he's just skirting it. He's at 10.1 rebounds and 10.5 assists. Yeah. Last year in Houston, he did not.
Which was a weird year with Harden, right? And just an aside, shout out to Russell Westbrook. He's not for everybody. He's a volatile stock that is like generally a really strong stock, but there's ups and downs with him from night to night. But when you talk about an overall macro picture, he's really awesome. And he's odd, right? Like lots of turnovers, poor shooting. He's a sick player. He may not be the best player in the league. He may not be all MVP, but like I've been trying to put more respect on his name every season. Like he's good, man.
I went from someone who did not really like him when everyone else did.
Right. Zaggers,
I'm like Team Westbrook. It's like, man, his triple doubles are trash. I'm like, yeah, but that's 10 in each category.
Dude,
it's incredible.
Are those 17 assists?
20 assists last night.
Dude, he's a really fucking good.
Yeah, he rules.
Yeah. And, he's going to have some stinkers, but, like, I just love his volatility. It's just, consistency for me is not something that's necessarily, like, my main concern. It helps in a 7-game series. Don't get me wrong. It sucks when Russell flames out in a 7-game series. But fuck it, man. I love fun players, and Russell is fun.
I agree. And I do find myself more siding with, like, do you want it? You watch the games, people, on half of these debates these days. Because I'm like,
I agree.
Like, man, it's not as complicated as excuse me, it's not so simple as like, well, look at Miles Turner, look at his impact stats. He's the defensive player of the year. It's like, yeah, but no, no, that's not the case. And look, we're not anti-metrics here. We like them. We like looking at these things. It's more information. It's an easy way to use thumbnails to compare players or see how they're improving.
People. Yeah, everyone is.
That stuff is great. But it's funny when you're just like, there's been a tipping point, and for me, based on being a Sixers fan, last year the tipping point was really Giannis winning Defensive Player of the Year. That was the tipping point for me, where I was like, this is crazy. Giannis is a mediocre to good defensive player who is going to win this award unanimously because of this nexus point of conventional wisdom, loving rim protection, and believing that it's so more important than anything else, and then like composite defensive stats that build that kind of thing into it. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, he's not even an elite defensive player. He's just good. And he won Defensive Player of the Year by like leaps and bounds, just annihilated everyone in that. And I'm like, this is trash. We've crossed, the Rubicon here. We are now actually, the rebels have taken over the government.
I love all this defensive, all-time defensive debate and Defensive Player of the Year. And you mentioned Miles Turner, who came out and was like, I'm an impact player, man. And of course, I want him to say that, right? And he is always like a league top 5 in blocks every year. I know what you mean, though. Like, the Pacers are kind of like not necessarily amazing with him on the court, but he's a nice player. I like him.
Nice player. They have like the 12th or 13th ranked defense.
They might be 30th without him. I don't know. I mean, we can find out stats. But like, I think when Draymond Green was like, I'm the best defender of all time, and Dennis Rodman, I don't know if he said anything, but a lot of people came to Dennis Rodman's support, and then Ben Wallace was in the mix. I'm like, these are all great things to think about for me. It's fun. And of course, Draymond Green should think he's the best. In my opinion, he is the best. But as we talked about last week, it's kind of shaded with colors of him being also a great offensive player. But like, to me, Ben Simmons is the clear defensive player of the year this year. I think he's just kind of a genius at the height of his physical peak, which is important for anything, but especially defense. And I think you can give it to him with ease. But I also want to put some respect on Miles Turner's name too. Like, he's pretty good.
Good shot blocker. He's a good player.
Yeah.
My biggest issue is more the tyranny of shot blocking and rim protection, because over the last 10 years, everyone has come to the same conclusion that that's how you build a good defense. Like, you have to have a rim protector first. And it kind of echoes the way that shooting was first an anomaly. Holy shit, we got a guy who can make threes, to saying, all right, well, every perimeter player needs to have like a certain degree of gravity. They have to at least hit a third. Now it's like 36% of their open threes. Like, they have to be able to do it. And that's what happened with the center position. You know, you look at the Knicks, you got Nerlens, you got Mitch. You look at the Sixers, you got Embiid, you have, you know, Dwight Howard, you had Tony Bradley. I mean, that's like 5 guys whose main defensive attribute is rim protection on 2 teams. And you can just go around the league and look, like, everybody has a rim protector. They're completely run of the mill. They're
Mitchell
really
Robinson.
easy to get. So yes, there are guys like Gobert or Miles Turner who are better than other ones. But just rim protection itself, it's everywhere. It's barely a commodity in the NBA at this point. You know, like, so I kind of view shooting that same way. I view rim protection that same way. And it's not just being a Simmons fan. I think he was clearly the best defensive player last year, and clearly this year. It's not even a question. But if someone said, hey, I think it's Kawhi, or I think it's Marcus Smart, I'm like, look, I'm here for that. I want more arguments about wing defenders and point of attack defenders, because they're actually an anomaly. There are 30 good rim protectors in the NBA, maybe only 6 or 7 great ones. But like, Hassan Whiteside can protect the fucking rim. Like, that's what he does. That's why he's in the league. He can protect the rim. There are a whole bunch of guys who are in the league because they have that one skill. And like, how many guys are elite perimeter defenders? How many? How many can you name? Like 5? Like, who are they? I'd much rather see the guys who are unique and guys who are different from most guys of their position be rewarded in this kind of discussion.
I remember when I was tricked by kids older than me into thinking that like playing the guitar well was important. And you know, when you're a kid, it's like, oh, I want to be in a band. And I would go to Guitar Center or like Matt Umanov on the West Side in New York City and see all these rippers just like playing like Led Zeppelin solos and like just like blowing the socks off the joint and people gathering around. And I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to be that good. And to me, those were, and now that I'm an adult, I'm like, those are rim protectors, because I soon found out that like to play in a fun band or the bands I enjoy don't necessarily have to rip at the guitar, you know? And you know, since we're talking about watching the games, bro, like there's nothing to do during quarantine. So I've been watching like YouTubes of like X's and O's guys talking about breaking down defense. And it's made me really appreciate good songwriting. Players who know how to switch and who can tell other teammates where to go and where to occupy space. Like, those are the geniuses, I think, defensively. And as soon as you kind of see that, for me personally, I could not unsee Guitar Center. I was like, oh, you guys are just guitar soloists who protect the rim. But I've seen too much about like the way defense is played in 2021, and these people that are really easy to catch on YouTube, just like breaking down plays and how switching is everything, and ball screens and matchups, and how Draymond Green manufactures the proper matchup and the proper looks for his defensive squad. I really value those, so I'm with you. Marcus Smart is awesome.
I just think scarcity is important too, because if you have a rim protecting center, you would like him to be able to make a 3, but it's not required. Mm-hmm. You would like him to be able to catch a lob, but also not that required. You don't ask a rim protecting center to do much of anything else, because rim protection takes such a priority for that position.
It's the only thing we can observe clearly, right? It's like like Mutombo waving his finger. That's the culture, right?
Right. So I think that's been the modern NBA, and there's less emphasis on like post moves, and now there's an emphasis on centers making threes. But if you look at the actual numbers of centers who have gravity, there aren't many. I mean, there just are not. Every 3-pointer that Marc Gasol takes is wide open. No one's sticking out there guarding him.
Which is the Bucks defense, right?
Yeah, but like across the league, there are very, very few guys who actually play at the 5 significant minutes. Like Brook Lopez, but again, his are almost all open too. Like there are just not that many guys who are really good shooters at the 5 because that position is based around rim protection.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, a guard, you look at someone like, I don't know, Shaquille Harrison can barely stick in the NBA. He's a great defensive player. He just doesn't have the offensive chops. There's no criteria like for centers besides being a rim protector. But if you're a guard, to be an elite defensive guard, you also have to be able to shoot. You also have to be able to dribble. You have this other, you have to at least be a 3-and-D guy now. Yeah. So I have more appreciation for those guys because centers don't have to do shit. All they have to do is protect the rim. Guards have to actually be functional. Think of how good, what the fuck is his name? Guy who was on the, I'm just slipping. Guy who was on Chicago, guard, went to Atlanta, fantastic defender.
Chris Dunn.
Dunn, yeah. I don't know why. But anyway, Dunn can't really get a lot of minutes in the NBA or be like a star because he's not a good offensive player. He might be the best perimeter defender in the entire NBA.
He's nasty, yeah. Yeah, he's got individual skills. And this shade, what you're talking about shades the entire KBB. Not to reveal too much, but this is why I shy away from players like Weissman or Jackson Hayes. And they're still good. They should be taken in the lottery, but like rim protection and dunking and efficiency are great things. I love Mitchell Robinson. But when you're looking at options of guards and forwards who can do a little bit more, that really appeals to me.
I guess the equivalent would be saying the Defensive Player of the Year being reserved as a award for centers is like saying MVP is for shooters. Mm-hmm. You're basically saying there's one criteria for it, and whoever is best at it.
Yeah.
The best shooter in the NBA, that's your MVP. The best rim protector, that's your defensive MVP.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of interesting that we reward the last thing we see, but I really love players like Tony Allen who kind of make life uncomfortable for teams trying to set up a play where a defensive player like Marc Gasol can have the last moment, that last optic of rejecting a shot or gathering a rebound. And Dennis Rodman was awesome, and he was the king of this, right? Demonstrative rebounds. He's like, well, I think rebounding is important as scoring. He's wrong, but he tried to demonstrate that to us visually, right? But Scottie Pippen, to me, was a better defender than Dennis Rodman. And Scottie Pippen had a different influence, right?
Well, we just lost Quo. Internet went down. Balloon accident. Who can say? Quo just vanished. Until next episode. Cookies! Cookies. That was Quo.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.